Daughter-in-law's friend mocked me as an ugly bum, so I quit babysitting. Guess who's laughing now, plus updates. Original post, well, you don't get to 67 without having some stories to tell. I've been through enough to know when to walk away, when to stand my ground, and when to let things roll off my back. That's the wisdom age and experience give you. I'm a retired military man. After serving my country for decades, I retired and settled into what I thought would be a peaceful life. But retirement doesn't mean sitting on your hands all day. I like to stay active, so I spent my post-military life coaching baseball for kids at a local club. Teaching those kids gives me purpose. I like seeing them develop their skills, and I feel like I'm giving back to the community in some small way. I'm single now. My wife died 4 years ago due to COVID. I have a son who's married, and they recently had a baby. I was elated at the sight of my granddaughter. I always wanted to have a daughter, but we were left with just a son. We couldn't conceive after him. That's why, when my son and daughter-in-law came to me with their hands out a little over 8 months ago, I didn't hesitate to help. My granddaughter was born, and like a lot of young couples, they were in over their heads financially. Both of them work full-time jobs, which is fine, but they were struggling to find affordable childcare. We all know daycare is expensive these days. And hiring a nanny? Forget about it. They couldn't swing it. So, after her maternity leave was over, I stepped up and offered to watch my granddaughter. Why not? I've got the time and I love the kid. Plus, it would give me the chance to bond with her, something I didn't always get to do when my son was young because I was mostly deployed. For the past 8 months, I've been doing just that, babysitting my granddaughter during the day while my son and daughter-in-law go to work. I didn't ask for anything in return. No money, no favors, just the satisfaction of knowing I was helping my family. After my morning class, I go to their house, and by that time, my daughter-in-law is ready to leave for work. I spend the day with the baby. I'd keep her busy with activities, take her for walks, play with her, change diapers, the whole 9 yards. By the time the day ends, I stay at her place until my son and daughter-in-law come home from work, just to make sure everything is in order before heading back to my own house. It isn't easy work, but it isn't unbearable either. I love my granddaughter, and that's enough. However, there's something about my daughter-in-law that makes me feel uncomfortable. She hasn't been rude to me directly, but there's always this underlying tension in the air, a coldness in her attitude. I couldn't quite put my finger on it at first, but now I think it's about my physique and appearance. I have served my country and have taken bullets. I have a gunshot scar on my right ear, a weathered and rugged face, which might look unpleasant to my daughter-in-law. The coldness was bearable, but for the last 2 to 3 months, there's something more. My daughter-in-law has a friend named Bonnie who often drops by in the evening and sometimes arrives with her when she returns from work. Usually, I play with my granddaughter on the front lawn in the evening. When my daughter-in-law arrives, she freshens up, picks up the baby from the lawn, and then I leave. On the days Bonnie comes, my daughter-in-law doesn't come out. She spends time with her friend and doesn't attend to the baby. So I overstay to give her the time to hang out with her friend. Now, I don't know Bonnie that well, but from the day I saw her for the first time, I didn't like her. I'm not one to judge people too quickly, but there's something about her that just doesn't sit right with me. Maybe it's the way she carries herself. There's an air of arrogance about her, like she thinks she's better than everyone else in the room. Maybe it's me just being old-fashioned. But I believe you can learn a lot about a person by how they treat others. And Bonnie? Well, she treated me like I was invisible. Whenever Bonnie is over, she and my daughter-in-law sit in the living room or the kitchen, chatting and laughing. I didn't mind that part, but every time I passed by them or entered the house, I'd catch them exchanging those weird looks. You know the type. Those sideways glances that make you feel like you're the punchline to a joke you're not in on. There are so many times I caught them staring at me and whispering something, as if I was the subject. And when they make eye contact with me, they just smirk at each other. It makes me uncomfortable, but I don't want to cause a scene, so I keep my mouth shut. After all, I'm there to take care of my granddaughter, not to worry about what 2 women in their 30s think of me. But it just isn't the looks. There's an overall vibe of judgment coming from them, like I don't belong. I'd be in the living room playing with my granddaughter, and I'd hear their whispers from the kitchen. Sometimes they'd stop talking altogether when I walked by, only to start up again once I was out of earshot. They didn't have to say anything for me to know they were talking about me. The air gets thick with it. It bothers me, but I figured whatever. It's just a couple of immature women gossiping. I'm a grown man. I don't need validation from them. My job is to take care of my granddaughter, and I'm doing that just fine. But in the back of my mind, I can't shake the feeling that something's off. There's one more thing. My daughter-in-law never quite seems to appreciate the help I'm giving. At least, not like I thought she would. But I keep at it because I want to support my son and his family. I spoke to my friends about this, and they dismissed it, saying I was just overthinking it. Why on earth would these two women be bothered about me? They said. They would have plenty of other stuff to gossip about. I really don't know what to do in this situation. Am I really overthinking? I researched this, and according to some pages, I may be suffering from a disorder. I don't know. It's so lonely being an old man. I don't have anyone who can understand me. I certainly cannot confront my son about it. My friends dismissed my concern. It has reached the point where I don't want to babysit my granddaughter anymore. And whenever I see Bonnie, I want to run out of there. Am I going nuts? Is my feeling even genuine? Now for the updates. Update 1. Thank you, my friend, for approving my post. I was kind of scared that people might call me crazy, but I'm thankful that a lot of my pals validated my feelings to be real. The vibe is real, I tell you, because I overheard a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear, and it proves that one should really trust their instincts. Bonnie said something that hit me like a ton of bricks. So, the day before yesterday, a regular evening, my daughter-in-law came home from work with Bonnie. It was raining outside, so I was playing with my granddaughter in the living room. They walked past me, and as usual, I felt the negative vibe radiating from their looks. Since I was in the living room, they sat inside the room to talk. After a while, I went to use the bathroom, and just then, my granddaughter started crying. They didn't see me going to the bathroom. Daughter-in-law and her friend rushed from the room to attend her. Her friend said, "When did he leave?" Daughter-in-law said, "Do you know? Could he just leave the baby alone without informing us?" Dang! The bathroom was attached to the living room, and I could hear every word clearly. Then Bonnie said, "That ugly bum has gotten an attitude." Who? I stopped dead in my tracks. Ugly bum? That was me she was talking about. There's no mistaking it. What really got to me wasn't just Bonnie's nasty comment. It was my daughter-in-law's reaction. She laughed. Laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. And I stood there for a moment trying to process what I'd just heard. I wasn't sure whether to confront them right then and there or to walk away and let it slide like I'd been doing for months. But something inside me snapped. I wasn't about to stand there and let them disrespect me like that after all I'd done for them. I couldn't hide and take it anymore. I flushed and came out, and they were flustered. I walked out and asked, "What did you just say?" They both looked at me like deer caught in headlights. "Oh, we weren't talking about you," Bonnie said quickly, a fake smile plastered across her face. Daughter-in-law just stared at me, numb. I said, "I wasn't born yesterday. I know exactly what I heard. If you have something to say, spell it out to my face rather than going behind my back. I'm a military man, and I know how to take bullets in the chest." Bonnie rolled her eyes at my statement. Daughter-in-law was still quiet. Bonnie repeated the same stuff, but this time she was irritated. "How many times should we say it wasn't about you? We were talking about our colleague." I said, "Well then, repeat the full conversation, and then we'll see who it was that you were talking about." Bonnie gestured at daughter-in-law, and she intervened. "Let it go. Why are you creating so much fuss about it? It wasn't about you." I ignored her and looked at Bonnie and said, "I have a rugged look because I've spent half of my life serving and protecting my country so that people like you could sleep safely in your homes. I'm also not a bum. I don't lounge on my son and my daughter-in-law's money. I earn my own living. I come here to help my family without getting anything in return. Daughter-in-law asked me to stop berating her friend because what I heard wasn't about me. Screw it, I said, and left their place. They had no backbone to accept their words, so pointing further argument, I stood up for myself and called them out. That was enough. An hour later, my son showed up at my house. He was fuming. His first sentence was, "You need to apologize to Bonnie." I was like, "What? I need to apologize to Bonnie for what? Standing up for myself?" He said I humiliated his guest. Apparently his wife and her friend were talking about just random stuff. I was eavesdropping on the conversation, and out of the blue I picked up on them. I asked him if he thinks his father is crazy to unnecessarily pick up on people. I told him what I heard. I realized he was least interested to hear my side. He was more keen on getting me to apologize to Bonnie to save their reputation in their social group. "Apologize? My butt," I said. "I don't give a rat's butt about what his wife or her friend are up to. I wasn't the one who wronged anyone, and I won't apologize." He stormed out of my house, breathing fire. His attitude made my blood boil. I mean, how dare he throw his nasty tantrums at me when I was the one who had been wronged by his wife's friend? That simp of a man has been manipulated so badly by his wife that he has forgotten logic. I drank my anger along with a single malt whiskey and passed out. The next morning yesterday, I woke up at my usual time, did my routine work, went to train my students, and went to a park to relax. I saw my phone start blowing up with texts from my son asking me when I would come to babysit their daughter. Ha! I royally ignored it, directed my calls to voicemail, and continued my day. I came back after my stroll, ate lunch, and was having a blissful afternoon nap when someone rampantly hit my doorbell. I was expecting this guest. Yeah, my son. I answered it, and he started ranting at me. "Where were you? Since this morning I've been calling and texting you. I came here twice to look for you. Where did you go?" I was ready for this conversation. I asked him why he was looking for me. "Were you worried about me?" He got confused and said, "No, I mean yes. And you also, didn't you, up to babysit?" "Ah, that one. I spent the day relaxing at a park." He started ranting again. "What? Really? You were lazing the whole day while I missed work and struggled with the baby? I called you so many times. I even came here twice to drop the baby, but you weren't here. How could you be so irresponsible?" I glared at him, and he stopped immediately. "First of all, you have no right to question me. How much do you pay me to babysit? None. That's right, so tone down. Second, I didn't show up because I didn't want to," he interjected, saying, "You could have informed us if you wanted a break." I laughed and said, "I don't work for you that I have to inform you before not showing up. I did a favor to you, and now I'm pulling it back." He went silent, and then it struck him that I might be angry because of last night's outburst. "What a loser," I said. "I'm not a bum. I can't defend that ugly comment, and I'm definitely not going to go back to that house where I'm disrespected. But because I didn't want to," he interjected, saying, "You could have informed us if you wanted a break." I laughed and said, "I don't work for you that I have to inform you before not showing up. I did a favor to you, and now I'm pulling it back." He went silent, and then it struck him that I might be angry because of last night's outburst. "What a loser," I said. "I'm not a bum. I can't defend that ugly comment, and I'm definitely not going to go back to that house where I'm disrespected." He realized he had messed up big time. He softened his tone, sat down, and said, "Dad, look, I'm sorry. If this is what you want, we need you. Bonnie may have said something outrageous, but she's our guest. You know, if something bothers you, you could have told us later instead of confronting her right there." I was like, "Let me get this straight. She insulted me, and your wife was enjoying it? She should have stopped her, but she didn't. I'm not spineless. I have to take a stand for myself. On top of that, you came here and threw tantrums at me instead of apologizing. That was the last nail in the coffin. We're done here." We were still talking about this when his wife called him, yelling about his absence. He screamed back at her that he was cleaning up the mess created by Bonnie. And apparently daughter-in-law left for work, asking my son to take care of their daughter. He was working from home, waiting for me to arrive. He thought I was just late since I didn't show up, and my son was struggling to manage the baby and work. Daughter-in-law came back half a day. They both were anxious that they missed work. My son left, saying, "I'll get that woman to repent and apologize to you." I said no apology would help. A few hours later, he showed up with his daughter. I so knew this. He is not a man who can get his wife to apologize for her mistakes. I smirked and asked, "What happened to your wife?" He said, "She's working. She needs to finish her work tasks. But I passed on the message that you're upset with her behavior and also Bonnie's attitude." There's something more that I need to tell you. Actually, Bonnie's grandparents and parents faced some issues with the U.S. Army, so she's not particularly fond of Army men. You know, she sees you at her house all the time. That's why some thoughts may have crossed her mind, and she got a little sarcastic. But I'm sure my wife has nothing to do with Bonnie's comments. Side note, Bonnie is an immigrant, and her family has some history with the U.S. military. I don't want to disclose that part because I think it's ridiculous and a cover-up for her narcissism. I said what she called me had nothing to do with my profession. It came out as pure evil and mockery. She commented on my looks and the fact that I spent my days at your place and lived at your mercy. Also, I don't have any grudge against immigrants. I've met tons of good people from across the globe. I'm not going to put that part on my son, who feels sorry for his wife. I have no time for children. My son is handling his wife's affairs. I'm happy, to be honest, because it'll let me spend more time away from these idiots. You know, I was like, you can do what you want to do. You are an adult. I'm going to cut that part out. I have no plans to babysit them unless they apologize. And if my son tries to speak up, I won't hesitate to show my anger at him too. Update 2. My daughter-in-law laughed when her friend called me an ugly bum. Guess you had the last laugh. So, a couple of months went by, and I didn't hear anything from my son. I had effectively quit babysitting, and as far as I knew, they were struggling to find someone else who could do it. I figured they'd have to either shell out the money for daycare or convince any of their acquaintances to step up. Not my problem anymore. Then, yesterday evening, I got an unexpected visit from my son. He showed up at my house looking like a mess. Eyes bloodshot, clothes wrinkled, and just an overall look of defeat on his face. I called him in. I had a bad feeling about what was coming next. He just sat and stared at the floor, clearly working up the courage to tell me something. I casually asked him what was up, and he started crying with his face buried in his palms. "So, Bonnie was a scammer," he said. "She convinced my daughter-in-law to invest in some scheme that would triple the money in a year, apparently investing in some shell company. I didn't understand the complete details. Neither did I dig too much into it. My daughter-in-law got so impressed by the scheme that she not only invested her savings, but also part of my son's savings. And guess what happened to Bonnie after that? She vanished into thin air. They have lodged a police complaint and went to the cyber cell to track the payment, but no luck. I was shocked to know this. I mean, she was not a random acquaintance that my daughter-in-law befriended in a mall or salon. She was her colleague, right? But yeah, she didn't show up for work and her house is vacant. The cops took the details from the office and contacted her parents, but it turned out to be a wrong number. I didn't know what to say. On one hand, I felt terrible for them. On the other hand, I couldn't help but think back to all the times he brushed off my concerns, defending her behavior and dismissing my feelings. He chose her over me and asked me to apologize to be in her good books. My son broke down and asked for my help. He wanted me to babysit his daughter and also some money to save their sinking ship. I politely declined. I said, "I do feel bad for you, but you have called for it." Your wife chose to laugh and enjoy the derogatory comments her friend passed on me. She enjoyed it when her friends insulted me. You chose to side with your wife and her scammer friend and dismissed my feelings, so you live with that choice. I'm out of here. He said he could not afford to make ends meet. Forget about hiring a nanny. I was like, yet your wife's ego is so huge that she didn't join you here despite being in a hot soup, as you claim. He asked me if her apology would convince me to help them. I said no. Her apology meant nothing to me, just like your tears mean nothing. I'm not going to be swayed away by crocodile tears or a half-hearted apology and give out my savings and my free service. He also hinted at the fact that I might need their help eventually, as I'm getting old. I've considered this point, but I know if I were in a situation where I needed their help, they would have never stepped up. So why should I? He tried to guilt-trip me about how I was turning my back on my granddaughter, who has no fault in this. I said if my granddaughter grows up to be a sensible human, she'll respect me for standing up for myself. He left with a bitter face. I know I cannot count on them ever. But this is not because I turned them down. They wouldn't have supported me anyway. So, better I save myself from being exploited. I would accept whatever God plans for me in my old age. I'm not losing sleep over it. I'm enjoying my life to the fullest. I joined a school full-time to coach the students, and I couldn't be happier about it. Story 2. My 27-full fiancé, 26M, set boundaries around what I can talk about with him. Is this healthy? Essentially the title. My fiancé and I have been dating for 4 years, engaged for 8 months. Over the last 2 years, he's asked me not to talk about or drastically limit how much I talk about certain topics, including work, niche topics that I've extensively researched and really enjoy, and our wedding. Today, he added the cat I recently rescued to the list. This has severely limited the topics that I talk to him about and made me feel that he just doesn't want me to talk. This is backed up by comments that he's made about how monotonous and hard to listen to my voice is. Writing this out, I totally understand that I sound like a boring person, but he knew most of these things about me coming into the relationship. We knew each other before we started dating. However, I understand that those things aren't everyone's cup of tea. I used to talk at length about these topics, but I've worked really hard not to talk about them too much with him. I even set daily reminders on my phone not to talk about the topics that bother him until it became a habit. Initially, he said I didn't need to set the reminders, but he was noticeably happier when I started talking less in general. Meanwhile, he continues to talk at length about the similar topics that he's asked me not to: work and his favorite topics to research. When I brought up what I felt like was a double standard, he said that anyone could understand and relate to his work, whereas he doesn't understand mine. I've also made an effort to at least listen to and encourage his research topics, even though they're not my thing, and he says that these are the only things he has to unwind outside of work, a physical, public-facing job. It does make me sad. I believe in encouraging people's favorite topics, and I'd really love to have that reciprocated from my partner. Instead, the list keeps getting longer. When I want to give him important updates on my work, like that I'm going after another job, I have to preface my update with "I'll make this quick" or 2-minute update, and even then he looks like he's been forced to endure. Several times when those things, especially work, which has been especially rough for me this year, are all I can think about, I find myself with very little to say that won't go against the boundaries he's set, but I still want desperately to talk to someone. On those days, weeks, we'll have very surface-level conversations. Especially then, I talk a lot to our 3 cats and now the rescue cat, mostly nonsense things about how sweet they are and silly made-up scenarios, and then we just slow blink at each other back and forth. It's great. This upsets my fiancé. He's made comments about how he'd have to act like a cat if he wants me to talk to him and give him attention. I've explained that I'm just going through stuff at work and don't want to talk his ear off about it. And I've tried having conversations about how to resolve this so we both get what we need, but he usually turns it back on me in some way. This can't be healthy, right? Or am I overthinking it, missing something? We're about 2 months out from the wedding, and I'm struggling to finish wedding DIYs because of what this would mean for the rest of my life.